Rise for the pledge.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming. Call the roll, please.
Trustee Spurling.
Here.
Trustee Lee.
Here.
Trustee Hines. Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Trustee Marisak.
Here.
And Trustee Bond.
Here.
All right, we're all here. We'll move on to public participation. I understand that there are some individuals here to speak on behalf of either for or against the recreational training facility item that's on the agenda. So if there is anybody here that wants to speak to that or any topic that you may desire, now would be the time to address the board at the podium.
Hello, my name is Mildred James. I live in Montgomery, and I would like to make some comments regarding Ordinance 1647 and 1648. 1647, I support. I think that's a great idea. We need to look at utilizing older, unused, factory-built items, buildings. I just have one thought with that, and that is a concern that blending old buildings and their standards at that time in with what we're trying to, as a community in the comprehensive plan, do now, to me takes an awful lot of care in the details, because you're trying to blend two things that have a different time frame. Other than that, I think that that is a great idea. As for Ordinance 1648, I do know, I'm under the understanding that we do have a petitioner who wishes to utilize this potential variance kind of thing. And my focus is on the ordinance for 1648. I have both external concerns and internal concerns. External concerns really focuses on the limited parking space. And I do know that the village has really worked to try to solve that issue in such a small, narrow space. Kind of thing by coming up with a drop-off space. My concern is, if I understand correctly, the facility, the training baseball facility, hopes to run 2 teams and have them possibly overlap in the coming and going in use, or either do it back to back. And when you put people trying to drop off kids from 4 to 10, also individuals who can drive themselves, which would include teenagers who drive, as well as older individuals, that to me still seems to be a congested traffic event with great potential for concern there. So that is my external concern. My internal concern has 4 components to it. And that issue has to do with the need for certain things to be in place and completed before the actual facility was to open. One would be the sprinkler system in the front hall. There isn't one, and I understand that that is underway, but I really think that should be done before it opens. My second concern is that emergency evacuation exit and, signs as to, the exit is this way. When you look at how potentially the netting to play, to practice baseball may be set up, and the fact that someone might be focused on that. If someone says, leave now, you look to try to find an exit sign to help you achieve that. You may see the exit sign way over there, but but you got all of this netting and everything. It's almost like a maze. How do you get to it? So I think it is very, very important that there are large enough exit signs with arrows and that they're spaced close enough or not too far so that someone doesn't get concerned. Because you got potentially after-school kids who are going to want to practice. They may be teenagers or whatever. But I think that is really a very important thing to have. The third thing is that there needs to be delineated, and I wasn't sure that it was going to be. I'm not trying to say it isn't going to be, but I didn't see it. And that is designated men and women bathrooms. I didn't see it. And at this, at this time and place, both girls and boys play. And you could have, that be an issue. My last concern is my greatest concern. And I realize that the ones that I have just mentioned can be resolved. However, I can't stress strong enough, I think they need to be resolved before the facility opens. Not saying that they wouldn't, just that that's something important to me. And I do think the parking issue needs more work. It really does. I just have, trying to turn around in a drop-off and somebody else is trying to park and there's limited parking space anyway, and people can park on the side streets. That's public parking. But there isn't necessarily enough to accommodate two teams that might be coming and going close to each other or possibly simultaneously. But my fourth item and last item is that I am seeking reassurance and comfort for my concern in terms of community individuals that have kids that would attend this facility and take great use, joy in using it. And that is that there are 5, possibly 6, metal gray transformer-like electrical boxes. True enough, they have chain link fence around them, but they are taller than I am, so that has to be 6 feet or more. They are wider than I am, so that's about 3+ feet or more. And they are situated on the top, on the first floor where the netting and all is going to be, in the very first room. So you walk in, there's a transformer on this side, transformer, and one further, I think, down. Again, they're all under chain link fences, but my concern is practicing in that specific area is somewhat of a discomfort for me. I find it hard to understand personally, it's just an I statement, that one could practice safely in that particular area with those 3-walled out of 4 walls holding transformers. So I would like, and maybe it's already been done and I'm just the one that needs the reassurance, but perhaps with us trying to take advantage of expanding the ordinance 1647 and blending things, in this particular case, it may be helpful to have ComEd consult and take a look at that site and tell us, the reality of the standards and all, that it's safe for people to practice in the same space as these transformers. And that is my concern, and I do thank everyone for their attention to what I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mildred.
Hi, my name is Tom Mullen. I live at 625 South Main Street. Addressed the council before. I wasn't able, after the emergency or special meeting last week, to get my paper in to have a 5-minute speaking turn. So I hope the board will grant me a couple of minutes. I have basically what I'm going to talk about here, and then I have photos that pass around for you to look at, for these gentlemen, and then for record. I've been to most of the meetings, and the advantages to the Railroad Street parking and access, which is where we would like to see them park. You have a double-door main entrance at the 625 address proper. That's the one that's labeled, and that's the one where they have their temporary sign, Fury Athletic Training or Baseball Training. There's ample parking and access to the building, very well lit. There's a bike rack already in place and can be expanded. Room for signage, you know, for them to place it on their signage on the building or paint something in the window, what have you. Much easier to control traffic and facilitate parking and drop-off pickup for the incoming and outgoing. At the same time, overlap. Now, I know there's a 15 minutes, what are they, there's a 15-minute time between the teams for that to take place. But I'm sure we all know the problems that are just north of us here with Nicholson School and all the problems there with traffic and congestion. And that's not even in the residential zone. And we're talking about a nearly dead-end street. And the residents would be less impacted. We have my neighbor is trying to sell his home. Last Sunday, they had, not last Sunday, the Sunday before, the 7th, had an open house, and they only had 4 people there. As the people were driving down South Main, there was no parking for them to park on the west side. And as they turned the corner, there was really no place to park. And a couple of them asked the real estate agent, you know, what's going on over there, and she didn't know. And there were cars that just drove by and didn't stop, and they were looking at the properties. So I feel that there is going to be an impact on the value of our properties with all that traffic. There's already a lot of traffic from the book facility, which we'll talk about here. We're going into the disadvantages now. The disadvantages is there's about 18 parking spaces we talked about in a special meeting available on the west side of South Main Street. There's no real place to pull over, drop off, and pick up people, even if we closed a couple of spots with signages and stuff. And if you did that, you would also decrease the number of available parking spaces. Now, last weekend, I don't have a picture of it, but Sunday, there was 4 to 6 vehicles parked in front of 625 on Railroad Street, 625 South Railroad Street, and none of them were parked on Main Street. It's not very well lit back there. I mean, it's, you know, there's a street light and a light on the facility. There's no real light on the door. It's a single door, walks into a single corridor with a single set of stairs going up. And you're going to have all this traffic coming out and then all this traffic coming in. Not well lit. There's also no sidewalk on the west side of Main Street, South Main Street. or Case, the south side of Case Street. So anybody that parks there has to walk out onto the street if it's wintertime and there's snow packed, you know. There's outdoor storage propane near the entrance that they want to use. And there's also the firefighter and sprinkler valves and where the fire engines would have to connect to would be right at the drop-off zone, the proposed drop-off zone. So, you know, if there's an emergency and the fire equipment and people are going to use that entrance, plus they have to hook up their pumpers and such to that valving. Other businesses would be impacted because they are working overtime at the book facility, which I have their parking on the 6th and the 13th. And they use the truck dock. There's trucks coming in and out of there. They're usually out of there by 1 o'clock. But they do work Saturdays. And then lack of traffic control, stop, yield signage, and a lot of people exceed the speed limit over there, even the trucks. I mean, they're trying to do 0 to 60 times on that stop sign there at South Main Street. I feel there should be a 4-way stop sign. And then I'm talking with Mike, or going to be talking, because I have 2 handicapped children that one is nonverbal, and I need some handicap signs posted. So, oh, and the other thing would be snowing. If it's snowing, they're going to use it all day Sunday. They want to use it a lot of Saturday, and then the nights, Monday through Thursday till 9 o'clock. Business is there till from 6 o'clock. The people are parking there from 5:30 in the morning, and then they're leaving at 2:30, 3:30 in that area. And is the village gonna, you know, come by and do the cleaning of Main Street there during those spots to accommodate this? Well, I know what the answer to that is, but whereas the property manager does an excellent job of keeping all the snow and ice built up from in front of the building and all the parking over there. I've lived there for 22 years, and he's done a wonderful job. Because he has people parking there for the other businesses, he's got some truck parking where Brown Moving and such parks their vehicles and stuff. So he does a real good job of keeping it clean and very timely. So with that, I have the pictures of 12-6, which is the business that's already there. And you can see there's a delivery. There's 6 cars that are working there that day. And I've talked with Glenn, and he's a very reasonable man. You know, they don't do 3-point turns anymore. You know, they're staying parked on that side of the street. And then the next day is when they were moving in, the baseball facility was moving in, and all of Main Street was parked, blocked. 2 vehicles on the residential side of Case Street, and Lola wasn't even home. Was blocked, and you know they were using the dock and everything. Now, well, that's fine and dandy, but I don't know if they're going to be using a dock. I don't think so. And then you can see there's not a vehicle, one, parked in front. And then on the second to the last page, is the bicycle rack that's there. It'd have to be cleaned up a little bit. That's where the Aurora Sanitation District has their lift station pumps, and I believe NIGAS has a facility there. But that's a blocked off area, you know, the bike rack could be moved. It's ideal for the bike rack. And then, of course, the last page, you know, it has the second to last page has a 625 number, and then the last page is the only signage, but that's where the signage is, in front of the building at 625 South Railroad Street, the west side of the building. And then again, here's a picture Saturday of, this past Saturday, of the book people working there. And they're there till about 1 o'clock.
Okay.
So I just asked the board to, you know, consider all this in making their decision on the parking and the traffic. And please keep in mind, you know, the chaos that goes on at Nicholson, and this will be going on, you know, every hour and 45 minutes there at nighttime
Okay.
in possible inclement weather. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
Very much.
Appreciate it. And we do have answers for some of those. We'll get into that as the board deliberates. But if we have the next.
Mine will be shorter, but my name is Dolores Rodriguez. I live at 220 Case, and I'm concerned about, as both of these people's concerned, the safety. Yes, we don't have any sidewalks, and so now we've got all day long, we've got the cars parked on both sides of Main, all the way around on Case. They're even parking all the way up to River Street. And I don't know if this is extra because of extra people working for this, the facility that they're working on, but there's just way more traffic. On top of that, we're still getting all these FedEx, all these, sometimes I stand out there because they've mauled, and I brought the village pictures. Big semis have mauled my yard. You expect me to take care of your yard. I expect you to protect my yard by keeping them off of them, telling these big, long semis they cannot be there. I literally stand out there and watch them, and they just give me the evil eye, but I just, you know, just stand there. And I just tell them, no, I stand up because they literally, big, longs, they try to back up, they come up, they come out, they can't get in there. I said, just leave. I said, this is a residential area. You have no business bringing in the big semis. I've called the police on them. That's a report one time that I did. But anyway, my concern is the safety for the people that are walking. You've got all these cars coming in. You've got all these cars going this way. There's just enough space for one car to go through. So where are these people going to, like, pull over when there's other cars trying to come through? There's no space. There's my driveway, which they're going to continue to come maul. They're going to keep backing up and going around. Tom's driveway, the driveway of the people who are trying to sell their home. There's just a whole bunch of extra people driving in driveways just to turn around and come back. So I'm concerned. And the people, when I first moved there in 1998, people used to take their children in their buggies or in their little bikes because there is no sidewalk, so they're in the street. Gone. That's going to be gone. Especially in the summertime, it's really, you know, what people do. So this, if off and on of the drop-off and the pickup, to me, seems like it's going to be a big problem. And I agree with Tom. There's a whole bunch of space. It's lit up. The sign's up front. I think that putting it all to the side of the people that live there is a big mistake. And I just wanted to put my 2 cents in. And that's all I've got to say. I hope you consider that.
Excellent. Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to address the board on that topic? I know Rocky wants to address the board on something else. And the petitioner and Ryan, you guys can come up during the meeting. We'll invite you guys up to speak. But Rocky, if you want to come up.
Did I sign my name too? Good evening. I wasn't planning to speak tonight, but I just want to give you an update where we're at with the license for Submore. We're planning to offer an upscale food this time, and I've been working diligently to see how I can transform this place to really a nice, cozy place, and I'm waiting for some decision by you in regard to the license. Based on whatever the outcome is, whatever license you decide to do, I will not object. Whatever it is, as soon as I know, then I can act accordingly, and hopefully I can create one of the best restaurants in Montgomery.
Okay. Well, you know that you came to speak to this board probably more than a month ago. Since that time, I think you were at one of the meetings where we did discuss some possible changes we were looking at for our Class G license. At this point, the recommendation from staff, we kind of wanted to wait and see for the end of the calendar year to see what the video gaming revenues were, because the draft ordinance had this 50-50 that we were talking about, and what we don't want to do is set an arbitrary number that either nobody meets or everybody that's off. We wanted to actually come up with a good number that made sense. So I believe in January sometime, this board will be discussing that openly again at our, I don't know how soon that data is available, but it might be as soon as our first meeting in January. But if you want, we can definitely make sure that you know when we're going to speak about this again.
Fair enough, as long as we know that there's something, and hopefully the numbers will make sense to everyone. I'm not sure, with the gaming, maybe some other time, we can talk about it, see, is it based on the profit or the revenue or what's coming in, out, for us or for everybody else? It's a big.
Yeah. All of that. Currently, there is no ordinance, so we're just looking at
Mark,
all of
as
it.
long as you keep me in mind, that's all but thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to address the board? Hearing none, we'll move on. The consent agenda this evening, I'll read the items and entertain a motion for approval. Accounts payable through December 11th, 2014, cancellation of the December 22nd Village Board meeting, the request of Bread of Life Outreach Program to conduct tag days, December 26th and 27th, and lastly, Ordinance 1647.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second, call the roll, please.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Hines.
And that carries 6-0. Thank you. We'll move on to items for separate action. The first one we have is the recommendation of Plan Commission of PC 2014-017, which is the special use for recreation commercial use. And that kind of ties in with B, which is Ordinance 1648. And so I presume that we'll attack both these at the same time and vote separately. So with that, I'll ask Rich Young for a summary on this item.
Thank you, President Browley. Didn't have my microphone on. This was approved after a recommendation for approval by the staff. The Plan Commission took this up as a text amendment to the M2 zoning district. We looked at the options of recreational uses within the M2. I believe that this is an issue that we've talked about to the village board in the past in terms of looking at some text amendments, and this was one of them that we've brought forward now. This specifically, obviously, is the item that goes into the zoning ordinance and creates the special use on an individual case-by-case basis. So item B would specifically be the site at 625 Railroad. So your next item would specifically be that location. So that's about all I have to say at this point on this one. The recommendation from the commission was to approve.
Okay. Did the petitioner have anything that you guys wanted to add specifically? maybe addressing some of the concerns. I know you guys probably went through this at Plan Commission, but if you do have anything you wanted to add tonight?
Just if the board has any questions, we don't have to answer. We don't for articles or anything. If the board has any questions, we don't have to answer.
And Mr. President, when we get to that specific item, I have some comments related to that specific site that I'd offer.
Okay.
I'd like to clarify a couple of points, if I may, on the Plan Commission recommendations. Am I correct that they're recommending that each special use would come to the board for specific deliberation?
Yes, sir.
And if the use fell inactive, it would expire after a certain period, I think 12 months?
It would be similar to any special use in any zoning district where it would, yes, expire. I don't know if Attorney Anderson wants to comment on that, but
If there's an intentional abandonment of the use, it expires. If they don't start the use within a certain time frame as well, it expires. So there are a couple of circumstances where they could lose that right.
Could we clarify one more time what is meant by the phrase recreation? What would be appropriate recreational uses for this situation?
the intent would be for something very similar or exactly what is being proposed at 625 Railroad. Recreational use, workout facilities, possibly other types of training facilities or health clubs, that type of use would be appropriate. That was the intent. So your typical indoor recreational use was anticipated.
As a special use, then, it would always come to the board for public deliberation.
Yes.
Okay, I'm at peace with that.
When you say workout facility, does that mean AKA a gym?
It could possibly be a gym.
Does that
Again,
mean Planet Fitness has to come in for a special use every?
No, no, that is not what it means, because that's in a retail business district currently. If, for instance, Planet Fitness wanted to have a satellite location at 625 Railroad, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Boxing would be an example, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Judo clubs, karate, that type of thing. Fencing.
I know we've been approached before about cage fighting, that
Well,
could
again,
conceivably fall into this.
Possibly, but that would, again, come before you as a special use, and there might be circumstances because of parking or lack of parking or other circumstances that would be within the special use review.
Okay.
And just to be clear, the ordinance changes, or the changes to our zoning ordinance, we actually approved on the consent agenda. That was 1647. So these two items are specific to that user for the baseball facility.
I have a question regarding the, pardon me. When this facility was open, and I believe it was Anchor Brush, how many people did it employ? I'm trying to correlate, when this was a fully functional operating business, how much traffic and how many cars were using it versus what we're proposing? Is it a dramatic difference?
Well, if I could just comment on that, trustee. The situation is such that the building is so old that it was a different time when that was an operational factory, even before Anchor Brush, I believe. I don't know what the user was before Anchor Brush, even if there is one, but they were there for many, many years, decades. So the situation at the time where that was established in the 20s or 30s or 40s, whatever it was, zoning was much different then. You had people that worked in a factory situation that lived in the neighborhood and they walked to work. People didn't commute as much that worked in those types of industries. They lived where they could walk to work. So the whole concept of zoning was a little bit different at that time. And we have a situation where we have an M2 building in an M2 district directly abutting up to a residential area. And we've talked about this at the Plan Commission. If today that property was all vacant and the neighborhood was there or not there, you wouldn't set up the zoning such that you'd have M2 across the street from a residential zoning district. That's just the reality of what we're dealing with today and how we adaptively reuse buildings that are no longer functional as a factory. So what does that mean? Well, you have to do the best you can to look at the parking situation and the traffic situation. We've met with residents this summer from that neighborhood and talked about some of those issues. Some of the things that staff has talked about that we're going to implement is very specific on the parking signs. For this particular location on Main Street, it's somewhat confusing where there's a no parking zone. Okay, there's two signs, one on either side of the street, and you kind of have to determine where the no parking is. Simply adding 2 additional signs, we think, will help that situation. You can't always see the yellow paint in the curb because you might have snow or whatever. That's a situation that can be remedied. What we talked about again on this particular use was parking on the west side, and the area is torn up. We all know that because of the improvements that are going in on 31 and the interchange with 30. And Watson will be changed with that new 4-way stop or signal. So the whole dynamic of that area is changing, particularly on the west side, but it's causing some angst to the residents in the residential area because of new traffic patterns and frankly, uncompleted improvements by IDOT. So it's an evolving situation, and I think the appropriate way to go about this is to look at uses as a special use within the M2 district as we're doing and going through that discussion. With regards to some of the conditions on inside the building, I can assure you that between the fire district and our building officials, or our building official, we go through before a CO is issued for occupancy and make sure that the electrical systems are contained in the proper way, and that there is the access signage so that, or exit signage, so that that's in play. I understand Mildred's concerns about, netting, and you might be disoriented, but the lighting would have to be for the appropriate exit points, and that's something the fire district isn't going to ignore. That has to be part of the CO process. So that would be in place. With regards to the parking, there's several options. You could say, have all of the parking on the west side and funnel the kids through to the different locations. It's not the most convenient. The applicant doesn't necessarily want to do that because there is access to the east side of the building on Main Street. We've worked up with EEI an example in your packet tonight of how that could happen for a loading and unloading zone. There is legal parking spaces on Main Street, whether it's a mom that's dropping off her kid or a worker that's there during the day. Those are legal parking spaces, and police patrols that. If people are parked illegally, they're going to get a ticket. The situation of having an option of a drop-off zone where moms or dads would drop off kids that are going inside on the east side could happen, and then maybe they pull around to the west side and wait the 45 minutes or whatever that the training session takes place. So we think that there's solutions, and I would recommend that you make any of this subject to village attorney review because there's kind of some moving parts here. The point of bringing it forward to a special meeting of the Plan Commission was to try to facilitate the groups that want to utilize the facility during the wintertime. This is an indoor training facility for baseball teams that aren't out in January, February, and March outside. And that's the situation we're in.
Okay.
I have a question. I actually attended both meetings of the Plan Commission, and there was talk about maybe striping and/or signage. I was just wondering, had you talked with Mike about that? Did we come up with?
Yes, we've come up with a solution that we believe is reasonable, and it's in your packet as one of the colored exhibits
Okay.
from EEI.
Any other questions from the board? I would like to say that I appreciate the individuals that spoke today. A few notes that I wrote down during that is, I know that we're going to have these kind of growing pains when we look to repurpose some of our old manufacturing facilities that we do have in town. The Lion Metal building someday, there's residential buildings directly adjacent to that, and I certainly can appreciate that. Nowhere in this special use will it relieve the user or the owner of the building of life safety, any of our police requirements, parking requirements, same thing for snow. If there's a certain amount of snow on the ground and cars need to move, they need to move. So I just wanted to say that we are cognizant and respectful of those types of issues. The parking traffic patterns, I think, are in flux right now with everything that's going on, and it's something that I know that staff is definitely going to monitor during the day. But again, some of this is going to be at night, and it's going to be on the user and the residents of the area to kind of keep everybody up to speed on what's going on out there, so. If nobody has anything else,
Point of order, are we going to move on to these 1648, or are they mushed together?
I was going to talk about them both at the same time, and then we'll act on them individually. So if you have any questions on 1648, you can do those now or in a second.
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
No, that's fine.
Can I ask the petitioner, the ramifications to move all the parking to the west side? Is it,
Yeah, you can come up to the
Please.
podium.
I'm not concerned about the parking. They have an entrance there. Is it indigenous that they have to have that entrance there?
I'm Mike Douglas. I'm one of the owners, and Ryan Dolan's one of the other owners. There's two different organizations. One's Yorkville, one's Oswego. Yorkville's using the front, and Oswego's using the back. We've got a smaller organization, so they're both using both entrances. You know, the bigger one, it will be using the front entrance. That's,
So
to answer, I think Rich alluded to it a little while ago, it's a long walk from the front all the way to the back, you know, when they're only maybe 50 feet, 75 feet to go inside and up the stairs.
Okay.
in the material that we had to review, I seem to recall the phrase there would be 10 to 12 youngsters at a particular training session. Is that still an accurate number?
For the individuals, but if we're speaking about the east side, I think we're kind of concerned about that one the most. Yeah, they work in 2-hour increments, okay? So they'll have 2 teams, so ranging anywhere from, it could be 16 to probably 22 kids at the most, okay, for a full 2 teams, which they have told me they rarely have. But it's with staff, coaches as well. So that's for the east side, and that's in 2-hour increments that they're in there, so.
Then there's plenty of parking on the west side for the full group. The issue is it's more convenient for the one portion of it to enter the rear.
Well, the way the spaces are laid out, it's just, you'd be walking the Oswego team through the middle of the Yorkville team space. I mean, it's just not really.
There's no way to do a hallway or an aisleway.
No, there really is not. It just doesn't make good sense, especially when there's that access from the east side is right directly into the space.
Are there other uses being considered or throughout the year, or are we looking at baseball only and pretty much baseball through the winter months?
Baseball and softball.
And again, it is seasonal. It's typically it's probably going to be anywhere from mid-November to March, and then they're outside. So they're not using it for a full year. I mean, they have a lease for a full year, but it's very limited usage after the winter months.
No other uses under consideration? Okay.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know that this special use is specific to this use, correct? Like, could they say, you know, they're doing softball now, but then they're going to move a golf organization in there in the summer or whatever?
Yes, the grant of the special use is limited to this particular project. Now, of course, they always have the right to go back to their unspecial use, their normal zoning, and if they wanted to do a different sport that's similar and related, they would come in and request that expansion, if you will, of the special use.
Okay.
And the space itself really limits it to to probably this type of, I mean, you could never have a soccer organization or anything like that. It's just, this is even a bit of a stretch for what's in there now. They can pitch and hit and do agility, speed training. That's about it. That's how it works out for them.
The absence of a sketch is causing me some, if it's difficult for the Oswego kids to come in from the rear, how do the players disperse themselves in the area itself? I'm still having trouble understanding why it's difficult to walk from the east entrance forward.
You just got two different organizations in there. You got Oswego and you got Yorkville. And it'd be like,
It's just the confusion of mixing.
well, right, that's one of them, and then, and again, they'd have to walk, I don't know, what is it, 100 feet?
More than that, 300.
Or 300 feet roughly, from the upper stairwell all the way down and around to the other, it's a big L-shaped area.
And they would have to walk through the other practice, basically?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
That'd be my only concern is, I mean, I've been on,
Not necessarily.
Here's what I'm concerned about. As a village board, if I'm a property owner, I own a house in Montgomery. Now the village board is dictating which entrance I can go in and out. I have a front door in my house. I have a sliding glass door in the back. It's my property. Why can't I use the entrance that I want? I mean, I think it's the same for them as well. I mean, the board is not here to dictate which entrance they can and cannot use, just like they're not here to dictate whether or not we can park on a public street. It's a public street. Anyone's allowed to park there. It doesn't matter if the homeowner parks there. It doesn't matter if someone else parks there that works in this other use that's in this building currently, or if someone parks there going to this baseball thing. It's public parking. They can't park there during a 2-inch snow. They can't park there if there's somehow some sort of mechanical problem with their vehicle or their sticker or whatever. That's what the police is for. But I think it's crazy that we're trying to dictate which entrance we're going to use. And, it's akin to me having house plans drawn up and then the village saying, no, move this entrance over here, and here's your entryway now. We don't like the bedrooms over here. That's not our job. We either grant the special use or we don't. That's my opinion.
I think there's a difference. The rear entrance to that building, as I've seen it, is a service entrance. It's an emergency exit. It never was intended to be a major point of egress and relief. And it does directly impact public property. Your back door does not. So the atmosphere of a commercial building and your private residence, probably a bad analogy, but that rear part of that building was never intended to be a major point of access for coming and going. And I think the residents who have homes around there have a legitimate concern. Maybe they have company that would like to park in that street as well.
But once again, it's a public street. I mean, we can't say,
We can in
You
a
live
special
on the
use.
street,
We
you can park
say
here.
whatever we want in a special use. It's a special use. And if, in our opinion, it serves the community better to preserve that residential atmosphere, then we can do that.
then,
I'm kind of go back to what Rich said earlier. I mean, if it's still Anchor Brush in business, they'd be using that as the main entrance. That back entrance is not an emergency entrance or exit. That is an entrance in and out of there. You know what? I didn't talk when you did.
you know what, guys? You guys want to address your, comments to the board, and we'll,
Thank you. My point is that when Anchor Brush was there, or the user after that, it is an entrance in and out. It's not an emergency exit only. So, and people do park there, and they go in and out, and have been we've owned it for 10 years now. And I'd like to compliment you for the snowplowing job that we are doing. So it is one of those things, we do take care of the building. This, it's maybe a square peg in a round hole that we're trying to fit here, but we think it's good use for, that second floor's been empty for 10 years. And with the zoning that is in place, we could have employees in and out of there, and we could have 200 people in and out of that building. We don't. We may have 50 tops, if that, and out of both floors.
once or twice a day, not continuously, you would,
Well,
I mean, this is an unusual circumstance, and
it is, and that's,
I think that what's the board is faced with is the greater good, is the inconvenience of walking those kids through the building in a way that you don't prefer outweigh what the impact might be on the residents in that eastern area? Which is the best decision to make?
No, go ahead.
Not to put too fine a point on it, but actually your job is to review the standards for granting a special use and determine if all, there's probably 5 to 7 of them, if the 5 to 7 have been met. If they have been met, you should grant the use. If they have not been met, you should not grant the use. If you can address them by adding a condition here and there, that's another thing that you can consider. But it's not simply the greater public good. It is more objective than that.
And I understand where both of you are coming from on this. I think this specific special use is not a business operating 12 months out of the year, 40 to 80 hours, a week, 2 shifts. I mean, you could have 2 shifts or 3 shifts running out of that building nonstop. This is going to be 3 months out of the year, probably. They're not going to want to be in this space, I don't think, in the middle of summer when I don't think they have clearance heights. They can't really play up there. They can train. So I think there's going to be some growing pains in the area, and I don't think we're going to restrict access from one door to the next, but this is part of the growing pains that we are going to have when we look at these buildings that have been, some of them have been sitting vacant for a long time, and try and repurpose them and get facilities used at the least possible impact to our residents that live there. But ultimately, at the end of the day, your residents that purchased homes immediately across the street from a manufacturing facility that could be filled tomorrow. If somebody came in and said they wanted to build, widgets out of there, then you guys lease the building to them and they park. It's an allowable use unless we have no say in the matter. So I understand both sides of the issue on this, and I think this is going to be a very limited, I hope, impact on the residents, and I would implore you guys to work with staff and the residents, because I know you guys aren't the users, right? The owners of the building. Just keep communicating with staff on this. It's going to be January, February, March, and then let's take a look at it. I know the special use will have been granted, but let's talk and see if we can improve on some things for next year.
And we'll work very closely with the user too, to make them mindful of what's going on and try to keep them in a pattern around the streets and, not to get them where they're going in and out of driveways and whatnot. But again, they do carpool a lot. I think we might be thinking there's going to be a lot more traffic than there actually will be. Most of the folks live in the area, so they're not typically going to stay there with their kids. They might be there for 15 minutes. For the younger kids, the parents might want to walk the kids up and make sure they know where they're going for the first couple weeks, and then they're in and out.
they also, it is 1-year leases they have. I mean, and trust me, we don't need these headaches either. If it doesn't work, they're done. I mean, but they aren't going to set this whole thing up and then fail. I mean, they want to make it work. We want to work with the residents. And again, I mean, I've been around Montgomery for 15 years, building, remodeling things, owned that building for 10 years. We don't need the headaches. And I don't think we've been before you guys before with any issues that I know of. So, we'll make it work on our part, and if we get approval.
Okay.
I would echo exactly what Village President Rowley said about trying to work with the users to make sure, you can see it's an emotional topic, it's a hot-button topic here even amongst the board, to try to make sure everybody's working together to try to be good neighbors on both sides. So if you can translate that to your users, that we also want to, there's people that live across the street. If you lived across the street, try to be mindful of that, and I think people will respect that.
That was the 2 questions, was where to drop off, and at the end of his pictures that Tom had, even, you've seen the yellow around there, it's perfect to drop the kid off there and the car keeps going down to River Street and gone. And the issue is just where to drop them off, and they aren't going to double park because all they have to do is keep on going. The other issue, and I think the teams did this, is you're only looking at 6 cars a team. You're not looking at any more than that. They carpool, there's only 10 kids, probably only 8 show up, and this is by all the time. I mean, this is by fact, actually. You're never going to get more than that. But a couple parents may stay, so you probably get 4 coaches. Some don't have even 4 coaches, you only got 2. You got a couple parents staying, so you got maybe 12 cars on one side. And if the one leaves, according to what the one coach talked to me about, is he will quit like at 6:45. His guys will all his kids will be out of there, and the other team will come in at 7, and one coach will stay to keep the door open to leave it to the next team. But they're not going to have a duplication. They're not going to end up everybody there at the same time. They will stagger the times, and I think that's the whole thing. If you didn't stagger the times, yeah, you'd have everybody there at the same time. But as long as they stagger it, but there's no 16-year-old people on these teams. These are all 7 to 13, 14-year-old kids. So no kids are going to be driving, and they're not going to park their car and stay there. I mean, these are parents, and most of the time they're neighborhood teams, to where the one parent will take the other 2 kids in the neighborhood. So you're not going to have more than 12 cars. And I know they've been parking, like she said, on some of the businesses down on Case, but if you look right now, a lot of them are parking on Watkins because it's easier. The way they have it blocked off, it's easy to park 3 cars here and 3 cars there and on the other side of Main and that side of Main. So you really got room for 18 cars if you have to. And those 18 cars aren't going to bother anybody. I mean, they're not on both sides of the road. And on Watkins, there's no driveways there. The houses all face Main, so you just got side lots. So I think they alleviated it with the way they came up with the team's practice schedule, basically. And I think you're right, Doug. These coaches know that, and I think they'll be out of there by March 1st, I'm sure, just like the guy said at the planning meeting. We want to go outside, and as soon as they start playing games April 1st, which I can't believe in the snow, but it's the way they do it.
And, these are 2 private clubs. It's not a public access where there's, for $10 you can come and hit balls or something. These are 2 private clubs that are in there, and, so we do have control on it.
Okay. Any other comments?
I would just add that one of the coaches from the Oswego Club was at the first Plan Commission meeting. So he was aware of the concerns that were discussed, and he seemed very open to working on whatever we needed him to work on.
Awesome. I'll entertain a motion on the recommendation of Plan Commission for PC 2014-017.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Call the roll, please.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Hines. Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
And that carries 6-0. I'll entertain a motion for ordinance 1648.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Moved in second. Call the roll, please.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
No.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Hines.
And that carries 5-1. Thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, guys.
All right, this time we'll move on to item C this evening, which is Resolution 2014-019, authorizing the use of MFT funds for the US Route 30 construction cost share. And with that, I will turn it over to Engineer Wallers for his summary on this one.
Thank you, Mayor. This item relates to an agreement that the village approved back in January of 2013. It's an intergovernmental agreement between Illinois Department of Transportation and the village, and it outlined certain obligations of the village to cost share on the Route 30 improvements from Briarcliff to Route 34. And those improvements included the village's share of the traffic signal upgrades, including the on some of the legs of the intersection, we had certain responsibility. Also, allowance for sidewalk, lighting at intersection, and emergency preemption. So that was spelled out in an agreement that was approved in January. We've received our first invoice from IDOT to pay the village share, and we had, during the budgeting process, we had contemplated using MFT funds to pay our share of that work. And so this evening, what we have is a resolution to authorize the use of those MFT funds to pay the obligation that we agreed to. So we're projecting that cost would be about $262,000, so that's what the resolution is in the amount of. The agreement is written such that if there are overage during construction, it could exceed that, but if it does, we'll come back with a supplemental resolution. But right now, as you'll see from the packet, there is the invoice that was submitted to us. Right now, they're asking for 2/3 of the payment, which is $172,598.94. But the projected final amount right now is $261,513.54. So we rounded off to 262 in the resolution. So, and just as an aside, the original IGA had a lower number, but the state experienced some cost increases during the bidding process, and our contract is set up as a cost share with them. So, so that's the circumstances. I'd be happy to answer any questions. We're asking for approval of the resolution if you would like to use MFT funds for paying the bill.
Just had a few thoughts. The IGA obligates us to pay for this.
Correct.
And this is just us finding a method to pay that bill. Their increases are like $90,000, our share of it. That's a huge increase. If we approve the IGA in, what month did you say? Okay. I don't know if they had pricing on that or what, but do you have any idea what the overages accounted for?
Well, I think part of it was the original IGA was based on their estimate of cost, and I think when they got the actual bid prices, they were higher. We have been seeing trends in the state. We do a fair amount of bidding through the state system, and almost every letting now, there seems to be a fair amount of projects that are going outside of engineer's estimate. I think it's a reflection of that there's an increasing amount of work coming out, and frankly, there's fewer contractors now available to do some of this work. But I think it's a reflection that they did the project estimate, they bid it, the prices were higher, they then plugged those prices in, and that's what accounted for the majority of the change. And, you know, this is all beyond the control of the village. We didn't do the design, we didn't control the bidding, we didn't do the estimate, so we had really no control over this other than, you know, our assignment of our responsibilities for these intersections, which has been more or less long-standing, and we have master agreements for the intersections that date back quite a few years to describe our obligations in terms of which legs of the intersections we are responsible for. So, because when the local street comes in, typically, you know, we're responsible for a portion of that intersection.
Okay. Any other questions? Any questions? I have one unrelated or related question to this. The sound walls on the north and south side of 30. Yeah, this is for this project. I know that I think I've talked to one of you guys about this before. The wall on the north side is a different design from the wall on the south side. The north side wall, in my opinion, looks very nice. And I got this complaint at the coffee a few weeks ago. The wall on the south side, in my opinion, doesn't look as nice. Under what circumstances does the state think nobody's going to notice that? Or how does that happen for the same project? You got a good-looking wall, which happens to be on the Montgomery side, and you have a wall that doesn't look as, it's not as high quality on the Boulder Hill side.
I don't have an answer.
I noticed you both shut your microphones off at the same time.
With IDOT is that they have their pay items for sound barrier, but they can submit different designs and there's options that the contractors can select. So my best guess, and it is just a guess at this point, is that as those sections of walls were submitted for approval, whether they they were designed by different companies, different people, or whatever. They submitted different designs, both of which would have qualified under the specs. But I'll try to verify that with IDOT, get word back. But you had told me about that, and I hadn't noticed it, but when you look at them, there's some.
Once it was brought to my attention, it just jumps out at you, and now I can't drive past the sound wall without looking to see.
My wife-
And the one on the Boulder Hill side is by far the most popular used on all of the ones I've seen. It is definitely the one that's used more frequently.
My wife says that every single time we drive down that stretch now. Are you going to mention the wall every single time? No. For a while at least, because I think about it every time. So I'm sure you won't get an awesome answer, but please report back the answer you do get on that.
You can tell your wife for me, I'm not going to tell her, but just ask her to look to the north every time you drive.
Thank you. All right, if there are no questions on this is item C, Resolution 2014-019. I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second, call the roll, please.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Heinz.
And that carries 6-0. Thank you. Move on to our last item for separate action, Ordinance 1652, authorizing the execution of the sales tax incentive agreement for 350 US Route 30 Niners Grill. And this is waiver of first and passage on the second reading. And with that, I'll ask Rich Young for a summary on this.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Niners Grill that we talked about last week at your regular meeting, there was a draft agreement, incentive agreement proposed at that time. The applicant has reviewed that, and you might recall that the staff's recommendation was a little bit different than what the applicant had requested. That's been incorporated, obviously, into the draft agreement. The applicant has agreed in principle to that agreement. There was one typo that's been corrected. And expansion of the exhibit which detailed the $345,000 that was addressed by the owner in terms of the different elements that would be incorporated into the renovation of the structure and the equipment that goes along with that. I had attempted to email most of you that this morning. There was some confusion or some problems with opening those emails, but you have paper copies of that information in front of you tonight, and you see that the breakdown of that 345,000 plus is in there. Keep in mind again that the staff is recommending a $150,000 total sales tax rebate for 15 years. So it would be capped at both the 15 years and also at the $150,000 amount. If they get to 150,000 with the different percentages that are worked into the agreement after 7 years, then that's it. The agreement is over. I believe that that was all of the questions from, that addresses all of the questions from our last meeting. I'd be happy to answer any questions with regards to that.
Are there questions for Rich on this?
1 second, in the actual incentive agreement, Section 8 is miscellaneous. Item D, successors and assignment.
Yes.
The last line, there's a reference to a grocery store. We just need to switch that over.
Correct, yes.
That's it, that's all.
Guess that, yeah.
I have a question. Did the MEDC have anything to do with bringing this to the village? Were they involved with this at all?
The MEDC and village staff together met with the broker of the property at the Chicago ICSC show in October. At that time, we were informed of the potential sale of the property or the contract of the property. So we've been working together, yes, on, with the broker and the owner. We've had several meetings with both, and the MEDC and the village staff have been involved in that.
So this is a good example of how the MEDC and village staff can work together to bring development to Montgomery, is that correct?
Yes, I would agree that's correct.
Thank you.
A question on the cost breakdowns. The category others is the largest of the four that are enumerated. Do you have any more insight as to what is included in that?
That's all of the items below.
The format of that exhibit is a little bit confusing.
I don't see
That
it.
was generated by the restaurant owners themselves. And so what you see after you get the total of the 345, then you see the breakdown of the 144. And so I agree, the format's a little strange, but there you go with the details.
I'm with you now. Thank you.
I thought the same thing, too. Throwing a large sum of money into other.
It's a good place.
Just a few things I wanted to add. We talked about this at our last meeting. This is a key area for us. We've been working on really focusing on the Douglas Road corridor. I think this meets that requirement for us. Also, that this is a sit-down restaurant, something that we've all been pushing for in the village of Montgomery, east side, west side, doesn't matter where. We need sit-down restaurants in town. We have an existing vacant building that's been vacant for a number of months or a year and a half or 2 years now. And this will put a user in that building, draw people back into our portion of our side of Route 30 there. And the other thing I wanted to mention is this ordinance has the language that we inserted into the La Chiquita agreement that would essentially memorialize the requirement that they meet our ordinances for property maintenance and the methods with which we can withhold our sales tax incentive if they don't. So I think we're then protecting the public funds in that respect. I think those are all that I had on this. And the percentages.
Related to the tax.
Okay. All right. I did have one question. Drive-through would be a special use on top of this, so would have to come back, if they were to do something like that later?
They will be before the Plan Commission in January, and then back to this body for approval of the special use. They're determining now whether or not they'd add a drive-through or not. So you will see that as it comes forward, but yes, it would be part of the special use.
Okay. And I also presume a liquor license request will come at some point?
Yes, they intend to request, as I understand it, a beer and wine only. They want to focus on family dining and not really a bar setting, so to speak. So their intention, I believe, is to go for a beer and wine license.
Okay. If there are no other comments from the board, I'll entertain a motion on ordinance 1652.
Second?
Call the roll.
Trustee Heinz. Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
And that carries 6-0. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to items for discussion, the quarterly financial and investment reports that Director Van Voren put together for us. And with that, I'll turn it over to him for his presentation.
Thank you, Village President Barley. I'm happy to present to the board the financial and investment reports as of October 31st. That is 6 months through the year, or 50% through the year of fiscal year 15. When looking at what to include, we looked at the largest funds. We also looked at the largest revenue sources that the village has. So to begin with here, looking at the general fund, the total general fund budgeted revenues for fiscal year 15 are just over $9.1 million, while the revenues through October are at approximately $5.5 million, so around 60%. Main reason being that we do receive most of the property taxes on the front end of the year, and so we are over the 50% that you would normally see. The first major revenue, the largest revenue that we look at in the general fund is state sales tax. We are budgeted for fiscal year 15 for $3.5 million in sales tax. Although the sales tax is higher than last year, we are actually below projections at this time of year, just based on certain businesses, the sales tax being lower for certain businesses. That's the first revenue. The second largest revenue in the general fund is property tax. The budget for property tax for fiscal year 15 is approximately $2.1 million. Like I said earlier, the timing of our receipt of property taxes, we get one major payment in June, one major payment in September, and you can see that by the graph just looking at when we actually get the majority of the money there. So at this time of the year, as of October 31st, we've collected 99.6% of our property tax for the year. Third largest revenue in the general fund is state income tax. Budget for state income tax for fiscal year 2015 is approximately $1.8 million. Fiscal year 15 collections through October are $4,000 higher than last year, but are approximately $34,000 lower than projections. Illinois Municipal League projects income tax, use tax, and motor fuel tax during the year, and they have not changed their estimate as of this date, but we will be looking for them to come out with any estimate changes, and we'll forward to those to the board. So we're still projecting at this point in time the $1.8 million. Those are the major revenues in the general fund. There are two smaller revenue items that I thought worth mentioning. Building permits, budget is $75,000 through October 31st. That's not through now. Through October 31st, we were at 83%. And then fines and forfeitures, the budget is $368,000, and actual through October 31st was $130,000, so at 35%.
Can I derail you and ask one question on that? The budget is, the first one, building permits, the budget is $75,000 for for all 12 months of the fiscal year.
For all 12 months of the fiscal year,
Okay.
yes.
So we're at 83% for the year, which is very good.
Correct.
Okay.
Any questions about the major revenues or? All right. Moving on to the expenditures. The total general fund expenditures for fiscal year 15 are approximately $9.1 million. Expenditures through October are at $4.5 million, just under the 50%. So if you look at, we're halfway through the year and our expenditures are approximately 50%. That's a good thing. So in selecting the expenditures below, we needed to set some sort of level to include in the report. We can't include everything in the report. It would be way too long, but what we looked at was if a particular line item has an actual or budget amount over $25,000 and it's higher than the October budget. So the October budget would be 50%. So if we're higher than 50% by 10%, so it has to be 60% or higher as of October 31st. So the items noted below, there's 10 items noted below. Of those items, you look through them, and most of them are due to timing. The first example, if you look at Montgomery Fest, the budget's $40,000 and the actual is $41,000. So we're 102% of budget. Well, the fest is done. So most of these items listed here, it's just in regards to timing of during the year when the event took place or when we pay a particular bill, what have you. So I won't go into those in any detail unless there's any questions.
One thing that jumps out on there is the police patrol, the part-time salaries and the overtime. Both of those were, I guess, pretty considerably above. Have we been short-staffed over the last 2 months?
We are looking into that right now, but our busy time is spring and summer and into the fall. So we should be, after the holidays, slowing down a little bit. We are looking at we have 3 officers, 2 in training right now and a third one to come. So our training expenses have been up. But we're in the middle of researching that right now.
And does,
If,
related question, does the Montgomery Fest budget include the police overtime, or could that also be influencing this?
I was just going to mention, that does include, the Montgomery Fest line item does not include the police overtime. That is within the overtime budget that you see there. The other thing, and Chief didn't mention this, but we do have one officer that is still out on workers' comp, so we are down officers, so in addition to the officers being in training, so. Any other questions? The next fund that we included was a capital improvement fund for revenues. The total budget for the year is 1.5. We're approximately $700,000 or 46%, which is right on track. The combined utility taxes of electric, natural gas, and telecommunications is one of the largest. I think it's the 5th largest revenue in the village. So that's why we selected those. And we put those charts on here separately. But when we look at them all together under one line item. But I wanted the board to be able to see them individually. I won't go through those in detail, but I did want the board to see the charts. The capital improvement budgeted expenditures of $1.2 million, we're currently at about $500,000, is 43% for this time of year, which is under the 50%. The majority of those expenditures are the transfer of utility taxes to the debt service fund to pay for the 2 newer buildings. Any questions about the capital improvement fund? Hearing none. Moving on to the water fund. Total water fund budget is $4.5 million, and we are just slightly over 50% for the year. The chart does look slightly different because we don't list out each one of the months. Since we're billing every other month on water billing, we look at the months together. So May and June, July and August, we have to look at 2 months together there. So that's why you're seeing the chart look a little bit different. Specifically with the water sales, the budget for water sales itself is $3.5 million. We are higher through October, $184,000 than last year, but we are below expectations. And the higher than last year would be because of the increase in the rate. Below expectations, just timing during the year, cyclical during the year of when the water is used. So water fund expenses are at $4 million, and right now we're at about 1.6 or 40%. There was only one line item that came out of the water fund with the same $25,000 and 10%, and that's hydrants. And unless Mike would say differently, I think it's the timing of the year when those hydrants are painted. So, or maintenance is done on those hydrants. Any questions on the water fund?
Who painted those fire hydrants? Did we hire that out, or did the village paint them?
We hired that out.
Why did we do that?
We don't have enough people to paint hydrants or the equipment. Well, I mean, It's prioritization of staff, trustee. If that's a priority of the board that we paint hydrants, we can try to do that. We just felt it was a relatively low-cost item, so better to have someone come in and help us with that than pull our people off of other tasks. But I mean, I can assure you, there's no downtime that we could just do that, and we'd have to not do something else.
We'd be better off to hire part-time people to do that in the summer.
It's a possibility. We've had part-time people the last couple of years, not all summer, but they've focused mainly on mowing. But we can look into that.
I would appreciate it if you would.
I will.
The last page of the report is a cash and investment report. It is split down by fund, and I understand it is a little bit small, and I apologize for that. However, in looking at the dollar amounts and the funds listed out, on the left-hand side, you'll see village cash and investments, and that takes up approximately the first 2/3 of the page. And that's just under $10 million of cash and investments, split down by fund. I'm not going to go through any funds specifically. And then the last third of the page is cash and investments held for others. So just as an example, the police pension fund that's held for the sworn officers in the police department, and invested separately from any of the other funds of the village. The other items down here are deposits that we take in that may be refunded to somebody at a later date. So those are truly not the village's funds at this time. That totals $11 million, and then overall, the cash and investments as of October 31st was approximately $21 million. The other thing that I would state with this report, I understand this is the first time the board's seeing this. If there are any suggestions that the board would like to see additional items, less items, other things in this report, by all means, I'd be happy to include what the board would like to see. So if there's any comments on that, if you could get those to me or Jeff, we'll look at those and see what we can do the next time the report's given.
Question on cash and investments. If we wanted to see a review of the performance of our cash and investments, could that be another column in this report? Is there another area where we should look?
I don't have this or that on this report, but we could certainly look at adding something else in terms of performance, yes.
I mean, if my peers agree, I would enjoy seeing that.
I would agree with that.
Justin, this one at the top, Illinois funds, is that, there was an article in the paper about several municipalities basically had been swindled out of like $50 to $60 million. Is that the same fund?
No, it is not. We did not have any money in that particular investment. Illinois funds is managed by the state treasurer. IMET is what the article was about, and we did not have any funds in that investment, so.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions regarding? One suggestion that came up, I think Trustee Bond brought it up a few weeks ago, was the revenues that we're receiving for the video gaming. What do you, I meant to ask you this before, do you know what fund or where that ends up in our budget? Because I know that, I don't know if it's in line with your projections. You guys are usually pretty awesome at this, but that's a very new revenue stream for us. So maybe if that's something you can look into, if you budgeted an amount, what it was, how it compares. The thought would be that we try and earmark some of that for tree replacement, because it's a new revenue stream for us. But then again, I know that some things happen where we overspend on other items, and that might not be possible, but that's something that trustee Bond suggested to me.
We did budget approximately $25,000 for fiscal year 15. We are ahead of that number. I can't tell you the exact number right now, but I can certainly get that to the board in short order. I just looked at it, I can't remember the number, so.
Okay, thank you. If you have any questions or anything else you'd like to see in this, how often would you anticipate quarterly? So you would anticipate doing this report with us quarterly moving forward?
Yes.
Okay. All right. If you have any other comments on that, please forward those to Justin or Jeff. Thank you. We'll move on to, we don't have any, well, it's not called new or unfinished, but it's new or unfinished business. Do we have any to come before the board?
I have an item, please. I know I had mentioned this in the past, and I've talked to at least a couple other trustees about this. Fines as far as for snow parking on the street during snow removal, also fines for noise and parking over the sidewalk. I'd like to see that on the agenda for an upcoming meeting. You know, we had talked about a couple weeks ago doing some sort of potentially step program, and it sounds like it would be too difficult to really keep track of that. And so what I'm thinking about doing is potentially increasing the snow ordinance tickets from $25 to $100, also the noise ordinance from $25 to $100, and parking over the sidewalk from $25 to $50. And hopefully, you know, this is not trying to fine into compliance, but there are certain individuals who just simply don't get it. So I'd like to see that on a future meeting, please, sometime in the month of January.
Is there support from the board?
Yes.
We got two.
We can discuss it, yeah.
Okay. We can do that as soon as possible. You don't want to say a specific date, because then if it's not ready, we still have to talk about it. Another option would be to discuss this during the budget process that we talked about before. So when we approve our, I guess, FY16 budget in May, that's usually when we would modify any of our fees, correct? You can certainly do it anytime you want, but.
But that doesn't solve any potential problems for this winter, though. And if we're approving the budget in May, that would take effect next Christmas, or next winter, correct? I'd like to be a little bit more proactive about it.
Okay. How do the other board members feel about discussing this in January?
Discussing it, I think it's worth discussing.
Okay. Any other items to come before the board?
One,
Thank you for getting those signs picked up on Seasons Ridge Boulevard. There's still one left.
I think I read about that.
Yeah, on Seasons Ridge on the north side of the street. Yeah. Okay, but still, did they get to the other one yet? I haven't gone that way lately. There was one left. I seen that, Friday.
I haven't checked today myself, but to follow up on that, we contact the contractor, made them aware that it was.
Thank you.
It's
One-
actually sitting in a planting bed for the entryway to my subdivision. Might want to throw that at them. No, not when we just redid the beds, no.
an item, please, as well. Some months ago, we talked about maybe getting our Webster Street grade crossing on the list for consideration for rebuilding. And it has, as we expected, deteriorated, so I'm hoping we're on the list. And
I sent an email to the ICC not too long ago asking what, where we fared in the process. I haven't heard back, so I'll send another one and report back to you. You know, I was curious myself, so.
Perfect, thank you.
And have we been doing temporary patching for part of that in the past, or no, they do that?
We've done a little bit, the west track, certainly use some more. So we'll talk to the street supervisor and see if we can work with the railroad staff to get in there and try to smooth it out as best we can.
Thank you. Any other items? Okay, hearing none. You can see future meetings there. This is our last meeting of the year, so we'd like to wish everybody happy holidays and a new year as well. And also, I was going to say this at the beginning of the meeting. Today is the 40th anniversary of the Safe Drinking Water Act of 1974. So go home tonight, open up your tap, and enjoy some of your Village of Montgomery water. So that sets all the regulations for our drinking waters, or a lot of them. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Heinz.
Yay.
Trustee Youngerman. Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
And we're adjourned. Thank you.